Tonight we're going to be diving into one of the most disturbing stories that came out of Florida in the last few years. Minus the Epstein files, of course. A man with violent tendencies, disturbing tattoos, and a manipulative personality. And a name that accidentally connected him to one of Marvel's most famous anti-heroes. His name is Wade Wilson, but unlike the comic book character Deadpool, there's nothing funny, heroic, or entertaining about the real story behind this case. Within the span of just hours, in October 2019, two women lost their lives in horrifying attacks that shocked the community of Cape Coral, Florida. The crimes were brutal, random, and deeply disturbing. But what made the case explode across the internet was not just the violence, it was a bizarre mix of social media obsession, courtroom attention, viral mugshots, and the unsettling reality that some people online began glamorizing the killer himself. Today, we're going to be breaking down the complete story. We'll look at Wade Wilson's early life, the warning signs that appeared years before the murders, the timeline of the crimes, the investigation, the trial, the disturbing evidence presented in court, and the strange internet fascination that surrounded the case afterward. The goal here is to understand how someone with a long history of dangerous behavior was able to escalate into a double murderer and to focus attention on the victims whose lives were stolen. So let's sit back and dive into the true story of Wade Wilson, also known as online as the Deadpool Killer. Before the murders ever happened, Wade Wilson already had a long and troubling history. Wade Stephen Wilson was born in 1994 in Florida. Reports about his upbringing described instability, behavioral problems, substance abuse, and escalating criminal behavior from a young age. Over time, he developed a reputation for manipulation, aggression, and impulsive violence. People who knew him often described him as charismatic on the surface. He could appear confident, charming, and social when he wanted to be, but underneath that image was someone with a growing history of criminal activity. Years before the murders, Wilson had already been arrested multiple times for crimes including burglary, battery, and weapon offenses. He spent time in and out of jail throughout his late teens and early 20s. At various points, people close to him claimed he struggled heavily with drug abuse. Methamphetamine use would later become a major topic during the trial, with prosecutors arguing that his violent behavior escalated alongside severe drug addiction. But one of the most disturbing parts of the story is that there were already allegations of violence against women before the murders occurred. According to reports, one former girlfriend accused Wilson of kidnap, assault, choking her, and sexual violence in 2019, months before the killings. The case reportedly did not move forward due to lack of evidence and investigative complications. The detail would later become extremely important because many people began asking the same question after the murders. Could this tragedy have been prevented? As Wade Wilson continued drifting deeper into criminal behavior, he also began changing his appearance dramatically. He covered himself in tattoos, including disturbing imagery and later multiple swastika tattoos across his face and head while awaiting trial. His appearance became part of the media's attention surrounding the case. But at the time, none of this had yet turned him into a nationally known figure. That would change forever in October 2019. October 6th and October 7th, 2019 would become the deadliest days in Wade Wilson's life. According to court records and testimony, the events began after Wilson met 35-year-old Christine Melton. Christine was described by friends as a friendly and caring, compassionate, and full of life. She worked hard, maintained close relationships with loved ones, and had no idea that meeting Wilson would lead to her death. The two reportedly met at a bar in Cape Coral, Florida. At some point during the night, Wilson went back to her home with her. What happened next was horrifying. Investigators later determined that Wilson strangled Christine Melton inside her own home. And after killing her, he stole her vehicle and left the scene. But the violence was not over. Only hours later, Wilson encountered another woman named Diane Ruiz. Ruiz was 43 years old and a mother. According to investigators, she was walking to work when Wilson approached her while driving Melton's stolen vehicle. At some point, Ruiz got into the vehicle. Wilson later admitted to killing her as well. The details surrounding Diane Ruiz's murder became some of the most disturbing testimony presented during the trial. Prosecutors stated that after he strangled her, he continuously drove over her body. The brutality shocked even seasoned investigators. 2 women murdered within hours, no clear motive, no robbery gone wrong, no long-term personal conflict, just extreme violence. According to testimony later presented in the court, Wilson himself allegedly admitted that he killed for the sake of killing. That statement would become one of the defining details of the entire case. After the murders, Wade Wilson's behavior became increasingly bizarre. According to reports, he contacted his biological father, Stephen Testaseca. During the conversation, Wilson allegedly confessed to the murders. Imagine receiving a phone call like that. A parent hearing their son calmly describe killing 2 women. Stephen and his wife reportedly contacted law enforcement after the call. Their decision would become one of the key moments that helped investigators move quickly. Authorities soon began piecing together the timeline. Christine Melton's body had been discovered. Diane Ruiz had been reported missing. Wilson was driving a stolen vehicle connected to one of the victims, and the evidence was rapidly piling up. Police arrested Wade Wilson on October 8, 2019. But even after the arrest, investigators claimed Wilson showed little remorse. According to testimony, he allegedly told detectives he would be willing to do it again. And that statement stunned people following the case. Because in any murder investigations, there's at least some attempt by the suspect to minimize responsibility, deny involvement, or justify their actions. But in this case, prosecutors painted a picture of someone who appeared disturbingly detached from the violence that he had committed. And as this investigation unfolded, more details emerged that made this story even darker. The investigation into Wilson moved quickly due to the overwhelming amount of evidence. Investigators linked him directly to both victims. There was physical evidence, witness testimony, phone records, and vehicle evidence. And most importantly, statements Wilson himself allegedly made after the murders. As detectives dug deeper into the background, they uncovered a long trail of criminal behavior and violent incidents. Friends, former partners, and people who knew him began speaking publicly about his aggression and manipulation. One of the most disturbing aspects of the case was the growing realization that warning signs had existed long before the murders occurred. Some critics later argued that earlier allegations involving violence against women were not handled aggressively enough by the authorities. That discussion would become even more intense years later when documentaries and true crime series revisited the case. Meanwhile, public attention toward Wade Wilson himself started growing online, and this is where the case took an extremely strange turn. As photos and courtroom footage of Wade Wilson spread online, parts of the internet began reacting in ways that disturbed many observers. Despite the horrific nature of the crimes, some people began focusing on Wilson's appearance rather than the victims. Comments appeared online calling him attractive. Fan accounts emerged. Women posted videos discussing his looks. Some even openly defended him. This sparked massive backlash. Many people were horrified that a convicted murderer accused of brutally killing 2 women was receiving online admiration. The nickname Deadpool killer only fueled the viral attention because the accidental connection between his name and Marvel character Wade Wilson, also known as Deadpool. It was important to clarify something here. The nickname had nothing to do with the comic books influencing the crimes. It's simply because the killer happened to share the same name as this fictional character. But once the internet grabbed the nickname, the case exploded across all social media: TikTok, YouTube, Reddit, Facebook, and, of course, true crime communities. Some critics argued that the viral attention distracted from the victims. Others pointed to a growing cultural issue where certain violent criminals become internet celebrities. We've seen this happen before in true crime cases as well. People become fascinated by appearance, charisma, or notoriety while forfeiting the devastating human cost behind the crimes. And in this case, that debate became impossible to ignore. This kind of reminds me personally of Mickey and Mallory from Natural Born Killers and the publicity that they got during that movie from the 90s. The trial of Wilson became one of the most closely watched criminal cases in Florida. Prosecutors laid out an argument centered around extreme brutality, lack of remorse, and the random nature of the killings. The state argued that Wilson intentionally murdered 2 women within hours and represented an ongoing danger to society. Defense attorneys attempted to present mitigating factors. Mental health became one of the major topics. Experts discussed Wilson's history of substance abuse, possible brain trauma, impulsive behavior, and psychological instability. According to reports, scans and neurological evaluations were presented during proceedings. Defense experts argued that years of drug abuse and neurological impairment affected his decision-making and behavior, but prosecutors pushed back aggressively. The state argued that, regardless of any mental health struggles or drug addiction, the evidence showed clear intentional violence. The jury ultimately agreed with the prosecution. In June 2024, Wade Wilson was convicted of 2 counts of first-degree murder along with additional charges connected to the crimes. Then came the sentencing phase. Victim impact statements highlighted the devastating emotional damage caused by the murders. Family described unimaginable grief. 2 women had been taken from their loved ones in acts of horrifying violence. The prosecution argued that the murders were especially heinous and deserved the harshest punishment available under Florida law. Eventually, Wilson was sentenced to death. The decision officially placed him on Florida's death row. But even after sentencing, the story didn't end. While awaiting trial and sentencing, Wade Wilson remained involved in multiple disturbing incidents behind bars. According to reports, he attempted to radically alter his appearance with additional face tattoos while incarcerated. These included SWAT stickers and other extremist imagery. Investigators later accused Wilson and other inmates of attempting to escape from jail by tampering with the jail cell window. Authority claims Wilson was heavily involved in planning the escape. In another case, he was connected to drug trafficking activity inside the jail facilities. And at one point, Wilson reportedly survived a drug overdose while incarcerated. These incidents added to the image prosecutors already had painted during the trial. An image of someone who remained violent, reckless, and dangerous even after the arrest. Meanwhile, documentaries, podcasts, YouTube videos, and streaming services continued covering the case. The internet fascination surrounding Wade Wilson just kept growing. At this point of the story, it's important to stop focusing on Wade Wilson himself and talk about some of the other people who had their lives stolen. Christine Melton and Diane Ruiz. These were real women with real families, dreams, and futures. Too often in true crime coverage, the killer becomes a center of attention while victims are reduced to short descriptions. But behind every headline is a family that's been forever changed. Christine Melton was remembered as kind-hearted and caring. Friends described her as someone who brought positivity into their lives and to other people around her. And Diane Ruiz was a mother whose loss devastated the entire family. The brutality of the crimes left emotional scars throughout the community. For many people following the case, the most painful part was how random the violence appeared. 2 women encountered the wrong person at the wrong moment, and within hours, their lives were gone. That reality is what continues to haunt many people who followed the investigation. So a lot of you may be wondering, where is Wade Wilson now? He was on death row, but did he ever die? Well, today, Wade Wilson remains on death row in Florida after being sentenced to death for the murders of Christine and Diane. Appeals and post-conviction legal proceedings are expected to continue for years, and this is common in death penalty cases. Meanwhile, public fascination with the case still continues online. New photos, interviews, and documentaries like this one and courtroom clips continue circulating across social media. But beneath all the viral attention is a very simple reality. 2 women lost their lives, families were destroyed, and a community was traumatized, and one man's escalating violence ended an irreversible tragedy. The story of Wade Wilson is disturbing for many reasons. It's a story about violence, drug abuse, manipulation, system failures, warning signs, and internet culture. But maybe the most unsettling part is how predictable parts of this tragedy may have been. When people repeatedly display violent behavior, make threats, assault partners, and escalate criminal activity, those warning signs matter. Cases like this force difficult conversations about how society responds to dangerous behavior before it reaches this point, like these murders. Do you, as a viewer, believe that this case could have gone differently or even completely prevented if it was stepped into by law enforcement earlier when those warning signs were showing? Thank you for watching. If you want to see more documentaries on the channel, check out this playlist. I think you'll enjoy it, and I'll see you guys over there.